This is where you look at everything you've gotten so far. Examine each part of the problem. Define the elements. Organize the information. Draw conclusions based on the analysis. Deconstruct the problem. Pull it apart. In the 1970s, brands were generally set apart by whatever their unique selling proposition was. So you maybe had a laundry detergent and it was presented as being good at eliminating stains. And then there was another one that made clothes smell great. By the end of the 1970s, research showed that a brand needed to connect more to the social, physiological, and aesthetic concerns of the consumer. So we don't just say bounce, remove, static, cling. We show fragrances and lasting scents and happy people. You sell the aesthetics. Look at Starbucks. 40 years ago, the brand selling proposition may have claimed that their coffee had a better aroma. But today, Starbucks' main brand identity is less about the coffee and more about the environment that they create in the storefronts that they have. This is where you use all of that information that you gathered. Some of the questions that you came up with in your research phase are going to be repeated now. Ask what the message is again. What do you need to communicate? Who's the audience? What's the competition? How is the competition addressing similar problems? What does the marketplace look like? What's the client's real problem, not what he thinks it is? What's the impediment to getting the message out? What are the opportunities to communicate the message? What's the call to action? Are you supposed to donate? Are you supposed to make a purchase? Are you supposed to make a phone call? Do we subscribe to something? Are you supposed to take a medication? Are you supposed to be tested? Are you supposed to be aware of something? What's the audience incentive? And what would propel people to take the action? This is where you have to go back to the design brief and have all those questions that you came up with before. This is a good time to go back and answer those questions. One method of developing a strategy is through a visual brief collage board. On a visual brief collage board, you can put up color palettes, different styles of imagery, different styles of photography, and other graphic approaches so your client can become part of the process early on. One method of developing a strategy is through a visual brief collage board. On a visual brief collage board, you can put up color palettes, different styles of imagery, different styles of photography, and other graphic approaches so your client can become part of the process early on. The visual brief helps a non-artistic person envision the look and feel of your design solution. Take some of your ideas, not the silly ones, back to your client to see if you're going in the right direction. This is a must. I have been in a situation where I was working at an ad agency and my supervisor decided she understood the problem and didn't go back and talk to her client. We spent weeks developing a portfolio that the client rejected because it wasn't what he wanted. We had a completed piece and spent a lot of time developing something that was the wrong direction. Make sure that you are working on the correct solution. It might not be the right solution yet, but make sure you're going in the correct direction and get approval from your client. Generating concepts is one of the most challenging stages in the design process. It's a particularly difficult one for students and novices to start on this stage. It's about clearly communicating an idea or a message to an audience through your design. It's not just arranging graphic elements in a way that looks good. Formulating that concept is a result of the analysis and interpretation of your research and putting a lot of thought into what's going to be part of that solution. The concept generation process starts with preparation, going to incubation, to illumination, to verification. The first step is preparation. Examine your material for insights. Look for connections among the thoughts and the facts. Find some insight, some idea platform. Write that idea down. Don't rely on keeping stuff in your head. Try to develop an ability to see relationships among the elements, the facts, the information, the places, the subjects. This will help you generate concepts. Any of your first thoughts made help to lead to a workable design concept. Examine your material with a clearly defined communication goal in mind. One method is using word mapping. You write down all the words that associate with the project, even the silly ones, and then use a thesaurus and free associate. Quantity over quality wins. Your next step is incubation. Take a break from whatever you're working on. Let the concept work in the back of your brain. Your subconscious may do the job for you. Taking a break can be something like going to a movie or listening to music. So here I'm going to deviate a little bit. We talked about the research strategy, concepts, design, and implementation. And then there's orientation, analysis, conception, design, implementation. But, we didn't really talk about how to get that ideation thing going, about how to generate the idea to get that solution. In order to do that, we have to have a space to work in. Now, if you're a student, you're not going to have an office. You're going to be working at home or maybe in your bedroom or maybe in the living room or at the kitchen table. You might go to a restaurant or a coffee shop. You might work in the computer lab at the college or maybe out in the commons. You could be working in a library. If you're in an office, you may have your own cubicle. You may have a shared space. Look around you. Is it clean? Is it cluttered? It doesn't matter. There is no correct way to create a space. What is important is to figure out what works best for you and then shape your space the way that it will work to inspire you. Create your mood. Display meaningful objects, designs, pop culture figurines. A bookshelf can have stimulating effects. Books with different subjects live together. You can look at the titles and they may trigger a memory that adds something expected to your thought process. Sometimes grabbing a random book and looking through the pages can bring through all kinds of ideas. Chance encounters help germinate ideas. Designers don't operate in a vacuum. I had a student that brought his little action figures to class with him because they inspired him to work on his designs. Establish a comfortable working environment that lets you focus on creating and not on things that distract you or inhibit you. The objects you choose to surround yourself with symbolize experiences and hold memories. They have an influence on the designs that you make. Find something that's physically and psychologically comfortable. And remember, there isn't one right space for everybody for finding creativity. Part of being human is our ability to think creatively. We exercise our creative mental skills when we navigate around a traffic jam or make a sandwich out of leftovers. But when it comes to design problems, we just want to wait for that magic burst of ideas. Problem solving, whether it's for simple everyday situations or for graphic design, share the same techniques and skill sets. Artists, scientists, engineers, and just about anybody else you can think of engage in similar processes that trigger, evaluate, and connect creative sparks for the purpose of generating ideas and solving problems. The main thing when developing ideas is to decide what message you want to emphasize. Your research is going to point you in certain directions, but at the end of it all, you'll have to make decisions on what direction you're going in. Sometimes asking questions can help you evaluate if what you're doing is going to be useful. If you're creating publicity material for an event, you might want to ask, will this idea help fill the auditorium? Don't be content with your first idea. Keep pushing yourself to search further. Too many times designers just want to go with the first viable thing they think of and then move on to the production phase. But the time you spend thinking about the ideas, moving past the first idea and exploring others will give you a much richer result. You may end up deciding that your first idea was the best one, but you aren't going to know that unless you go through the process of coming up with more options. Exploring multiple ideas is like making throws at a dartboard. With each throw, you have a better chance of hitting the bullseye, just like you have a better chance of finding the most creative solution when you're exploring a lot of different ideas. The more experienced and skilled you get at generating ideas, the better you're going to be able to aim your throw with more confidence at that center. Luba Lukova is a designer and artist working in New York City. She says, I have to be really motivated and interested in a project to put my brain to work. Everything begins with shapeless, almost chaotic pictures that come to my mind. Then I learn as much as I can about the subject matter by reading and researching. There's that research. And then I try to forget about all those facts I have absorbed and let my intuition lead me. I usually start making very loose drawings until a line or a shape suggests a more defined idea. I guess the process is similar to a sniffing dog following his nose. I think with experience we need less time to do preliminary drawings. Sometimes the idea just comes right from the very first time I sketch it. She created this poster for Sudan. And she says, the idea came after watching a television documentary about the impoverished country. At the end of the film, there was a commercial promoting low-calorie food. The contrast was so striking that while watching the ad, I had this idea for the image in my head. I started by immersing myself in the client's project. After I accept the job, it becomes my own project. I begin to care about the problems that the client wants to address, as if they were my own problems. That's empathy. Only then am I able to put myself in that state where I feel inspired to work and I am able to come up with ideas. I think this is what people need from us, to feel sympathy for their issues and use our skills to resolve them. I usually present several ideas to my clients. Look at this poster. They're talking about starving people. And she's taken a nutrition label with zero everything inside. How awesome to be able to combine those two ideas.